Hey guys, and welcome to Petrol Ped and welcome to Paris. Now, earlier this year, I came to Paris to see the new Renault 5, an EV I fell in love with, and many of you did too. I think it's one of the coolest looking EVs to come to market, full stop. This, however, is the Alpine A290. And you may think, well, that looks a bit like a Renault 5. Well, it kind of does, but it's not a Renault 5. There is so much difference between this car and the Renault 5, it's going to take me a whole video to explain it. But let's take a start. So first up, Alpine, they are a brand that's been around for a long time. They have a history of motorsport, Le Mans wins, rallying, and now in the hypercar class and Formula One class in modern day motorsport. And in 2017, they came to market with the A110, a spectacular little sports car, beautiful things. So this is the new Alpine to market. It's the first of their all-electric range in what they're calling their dream garage. And I think, off the bat, it looks fantastic. I want to talk you through a few things. Now, clearly, the guys at Alpine have used the Renault 5 as a base, but then they have wanted to make it a more edgy, more sporty, more fun, more performance-oriented car, and they've done that in many ways. So, first up, in terms of battery pack, 52 kilowatt-hour battery pack, and the motor is not the motor from the Renault 5, it's the motor from the Megane E-Tech, so different motor. And then the really big difference with the car is it has a wider track. It has a 6 centimetre wider track. Now that creates a few issues from an aerodynamics point of view. So if you kind of come round here, you can see the wider track. These wings are straight off of the Renault 5, but then you've got these little wheel arches here, and the wheels are coming out. We'll talk about wheels and tyres in a minute because there's some really interesting stuff going on there. They're a wider tyre than the Renault 5. But a wider track makes for a larger frontal area, and that's not great for aerodynamic efficiency. So there's a lot of aero work being done. You can see this air curtain that goes in here. The idea behind that, not only does it give a nice aesthetic on the front end of the car, but it basically, from an air point of view, narrows the track of the car, helps with aerodynamic drag. The underbody of the car is flat. Now let's walk through here. Now, if we think about the front signature of an A110, you've got those 4 iconic lights, and the predecessor to the A110, you'll see it in there. And when you look at those in their rallying days, those 4 lights used to have tape on them to stop, glass shattering if there was ever a stone chip. And they've used that as a signature design feature, these 4 iconic lights on the front with the X. This little X is there to mimic the tape that would have been on those lights. Now, these are literally just daytime running lights. The outside of them come on as side lights. The main light part is this piece here, and you can look in there. The outside shape is the same as R5, but you've got the French tricolor up there, and then you've got this light cross there, which I just think looks really, really smart. And then coming around here, you've got this front grille. Some of this grille is blocked off for aerodynamics, but the front end of the car is nice. Other differences between this and Renault 5. In Renault 5, that is a charge state indicator. Here, it's just a really cool piece of body furniture with the nice Alpine logo in it. Now, if we walk round the side of the car, this is where, for me, it starts to get really interesting. There is, now, the OCD people in the group. This badge on the right-hand side of the car, you'll notice, is flipped round, but that's so that the arrow is pointing forwards. That harks back to earlier Alpines. And I believe in the early A110s it was the other way round, and the real traditionalists caused a bit of a fuss about that. So that looks like it's the wrong way round, but it's not really. I'm going to talk about wheels and tyres very soon, but Alpine and Michelin have worked together for the last 2 years to develop bespoke tyres for this car. Come down, you've got, as I said, a much wider track. You've got this bigger sill piece here, so a wider, more squat, more aggressive stance. That comes down here. Now the next thing, which is part of the Alpine signature, is this here. So this is called the Alpine swoosh. But this little, it's not an inlet, it's just a sculpting in the door, but there's a bit of a nod to the old Alpine and Gordini Renault 5s. I really like that. And then in terms of colours, I think we've got blue. This is the new Alpine blue. It's a brand new colour. It's got more metallic fleck in it than it had before. There's a black, there's a white, and then there's a kind of matte satin finish grey, which looks really cool. Again, another nod, very similar to the Alpine A110. You've got the tricolor up there. So yeah, a really nice, down the side of the car, it just looks squat and aggressive and cool. Take a look at the rear view of the car. I think this is probably the view most people are going to see. Little things, I really like the badging. This is the GTS model. I'll talk about models and spec very shortly. There's this little lip spoiler here. And then in terms of practicality, it's not bad in there. I mean, this is a little city car, and it's aimed at the kind of sporty driving. You want to be able to take stuff away and have a weekend away. Plenty of space in the boot for that. And then underneath you have a really big black diffuser section. I really like the look of that. Clearly no tailpipes because it's an EV. And then you've got this finally at the top of the window there, just a little bit of a spoiler there just to deal with the airflow coming off the back of the car. But when you look at that in certain lights, that looks so much like the back of an A110 where the badging is. I like that a lot. Now, the interior of the new R5 is a stunning place, but there is so much difference between this car and the R5. I'm going to start with the seats. So the seats use the same basic frame, but they are far more bolstered than you'll find in the R5 because this is a much more sport-oriented car, and the choice of materials is significantly taken on. This is the GTS. It's the top spec, and it's got these beautiful Napa leather seats. They're very special indeed. In terms of the steering wheel, because we need to talk about that next, this steering wheel takes a huge amount of inspiration straight from the Formula One team. So you've got a number of buttons on here. These two I like a lot because they are in anodized aluminium. The bottom left-hand one there has RCH. Now that's recharge, or really what we would call regen braking. That's where I can set my one-pedal driving mode, and it's RCH because that's what's on the button on the Alpine Formula One car. And then there's this OV button in the top right-hand corner. That is basically a push to pass. Push that, you get 10 seconds of maximum power and torque for overtaking. It's also how you instigate launch control. You basically put your foot flat on the brake, hold that button down, put your foot all the way on the throttle and then let go, and off you go. And you'll hit 60 in about 6.7 seconds. There's some drive mode selectors down there as well, but the steering wheel, just a really nice touch point. And then a big difference between this and R5 on the inside anyway is this center console now is basically straight out of A110. In the R5, the gear changer is a column mounted affair. Here you've got these three buttons, drive, neutral and reverse, with a central column. You've got a nice pad there for your smartphone charging. But it is a very nice cockpit indeed. The instrument binnacle and the infotainment system, that's straight out of R5. There's some really nice driver coaching techniques and so on in there. So there's lots of stuff to play with. It's one of the challenges of today. We're getting all of this information bombarded on us, and we have to be able to kind of deal with it and disseminate that to you. To really get my head around that, I'd need to drive the car. And then the last thing to notice is you've got these amazing speakers in here. So Alpine have partnered with De Vialet, which is a French hi-fi and sound manufacturing company. Basically, they do high-end hi-fi, and there's an incredible sound system in here. Talking about sound, they've also developed two different sounds for the car as you're driving along. They've not tried to mimic an internal combustion engine. They've created their new sound, their own sound. It's actually based on the sound the motor makes as you go through the various power and torque phases. And it does sound quite cool. But yes, I can imagine this is a fun place to be, and I cannot wait to drive this car. I love the Renault 5, city car, stylish, amazing, but this is tuned with lots and lots of performance in mind. So let's talk about how that's done. You might actually be able to hear in the background, that's the sound that the Alpine A290 makes when it's going along. Let's talk power and performance. So I've mentioned that the motor in here is the same as the Megane E-Tech. It produces 220 horsepower and 300 Newton meters of torque. all through the front wheels. Changes from the R5 though, because it's got a wider track, it's got completely new dampers, it's got completely new brakes. In fact, the front brake calipers are straight off of an A110, and a completely bespoke suspension setup to give it the ultimate dynamic driving and dynamic handling. In terms of range, we're really early on in terms of getting access to this car. The WLTP figures are still being worked on, but I think the numbers that we're talking about are in the region of 380 kilometers, which is about 220 miles. So it's not massive, but then the kind of work cycle that you would expect this to, the driver profiles, I think 200, 220 miles is ample. It supports 11 kilowatts AC charging, 100 kilowatts DC charging, and also has vehicle to load and vehicle to grid technology should your power provider have it. So I think all in all, a really interesting car from a driving performance point of view. Now then, let's talk tyres, because you know me and Michelin. So the really interesting thing about this project is Alpine and Michelin have worked together for the last 2 years to develop 3 totally bespoke tyres for the A290. And we're going to start off with this, because this is a Pilot Sport S5. They're 19-inch rims, and this is what's called the iconic design for the alloy. I'm not a big fan, I'm afraid, of the wheel design, but for the tyre anyway. So these will come on the more performance-oriented. So the 220 brake horsepower car will have the S5, and you can actually see just here it says A29. So they are A290 specific S5s. There's another one just here, but there's also, for the lower horsepower 180 brake and more efficiency, there's also, they've developed a completely bespoke to this car Pilot Sport EV. So this tyre, it will still give a sporty drive, but not nearly as much of a sporty drive as the S5. This is a bit more about efficiency, again marked A290, again 19-inch, but this tyre, or this wheel design, this is called the Snowflake. We can actually see the 3 different types. You've got this one here with some diamond cutting, that's totally black, and then that one's got the ultimate amount of diamond cutting. I'll leave it to you to say which one you prefer. I like this one from an aesthetic point of view, but curbing it would be a nightmare. And then finally, last up, is if you live in an environment where it gets a bit cold in the winter, they've also developed an Alpine tyre which is specific to A290. So you've got 3 different tyre choices that you can spec when you buy the car, and I think that is very, very cool. I'd go Snowflake, that design, Pilot Sport S5. Okay, let me walk you around this incredible Batman spec A290 and talk a little bit about the range, and also I want to talk about weights. First up, there's the iconic wheel design on a real car. I'm not a fan, I'm afraid. But in terms of the range, so there's going to be a GT and GT Premium A290, and they will have 180 horsepower. And then there's a GTS and GT Performance, and they'll have 220 horsepower and 300 Newton meters. And then the car's going to launch with the GTS Premier Edition, which is the blue one I've been filming with, and there's only going to be 1,955 of those, harking back to a very important number in Alpine's history. But the big thing about this car is its weight. It's a sporty little hot hatch. It's been tuned dynamically to be as agile as possible, and for an EV, it's pretty light, to be honest. The A290 weighs 1,479 kilos. Now, if you compare that to what the guys here at Alpine described as their #1 rival, which is the new Mini Electric. The new Mini Electric weighs 1,680 kilos. That is 200 kilos different. And I think that's going to make a huge difference to the dynamic driving performance. And then just, I guess, if you were to look at something, I don't know, a little electric city car with a spice of fun thrown in, the new Abarth 500e, they're about 1,410 kilos. But I think kind of under 1,500 kilos for an EV should make this car a huge amount of fun to drive. I want to quickly show you this trim spec. So this is an homage to the A290 Beta concept. The first came out a couple of years ago, you know, the 3-seat one. That's the only thing this car's lost, is its central driving position. But I love the fact that they've done this one. So it's in the white color, but it's got some black detailing. It's got the A290 white pinstripe down the center of the bonnet. It's got lovely blue anodized Alpine badges on the wings. And then you come around the side and it's got this lovely blue anodizing all the way around, this like signature lip. Again, tricolor just there. That looks very cool. And then round the back, you've got the Alpine logo in blue with that red center stripe running down the car. So what are my final thoughts of the new Alpine A290? I really, really like it. I like the R5 anyway. This just turns the R5 up to 11. I love the wider track. I love the more aggressive stance. And then it's the little details. I love the swoosh down the side, the tricolor badging. I particularly like these snowflake wheels. I must say, as I said before, I'm not a big fan of the other ones. And then the front end silhouette with the 4 lights, the signature lights, I think that just looks really cool. But the proof will be in the driving. And I'm really hoping that, having gone through the workshop we have done today and talked to the designers, I'm really hoping that it gives that sporty feel. Because if it does, I mean, for me, this is going right up against Mini, and I'm a big Mini guy. And I think the styling of the new Mini and the styling of this are absolutely on point. R5's a great car, but for me, this is much more of my kind of car, that kind of driver's car. And if it can deliver that, I think that will be amazing. We still not have any pricing confirmed yet. I think probably in the region maybe 35,000 euros, something like that. It's certainly going to be more expensive than the R5. And as I said, range 220 miles might not be enough for some, but I think, you know, for the car, the weight, it's such a lightweight car compared to its rivals. A really, really interesting proposition. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. Please put in the comments below what you think of the new Alpine A290. It's cool, isn't it? Anyway, if you enjoyed that, give me a thumbs up. Comments below are always welcome. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to Petrol Ped for plenty more content to come. And I'll see you on the next film. You take care, guys. Drive safe.